me go to the student view so you can see what I'm looking at, or see what you're looking at somewhere. All right. So there are some things to do in here. So these 4 videos here are short, about 2 minutes apiece. Those are actually from our textbook. So this is the link to the reading. So hopefully that links through correctly. We've had some weird Cengage issues, so I apologize. Well, okay, it's not going to let me know. Anyway. I shouldn't have to log in. It should be transparent, but apparently it's still not quite resolved. So if you have trouble getting to the materials, let me know. And I will also file another report with Cengage about why things are not linking correctly. So what you should have, so the reading, there's flashcards. Those are just really for your own use. They're kind of interesting. It's a quick way to learn things, because one of the things we have in this class is a lot of vocabulary. You're going to learn a lot of new words and new language, and not just when I up here and stub my toe or anything. But PowerPoints here. So the same things I'm going to talk about, these are just the generic PowerPoints out of the book. Again, it's a quick way to run through the book and see what the author has thought is most important in that chapter. There is a set of these rights and wrongs questions. These are really short. So if let's see if it actually load. Probably not. Oh, no. All right, never mind. Just kidding. So these are worth, on paper, only 1 point, but I will scale those up at the end of the semester so that we have the appropriate proportions in them. One of the things that we have to deal with is Cengage is kind of all over the place. Here's a question that they say, so it's 1 point, and then your lab simulations are worth 100 points. So I will do some equalization at the end of that. I've tried to do it before in Canvas where we tried to do it ahead of time, and it didn't really work that great. So there are 2 simulations here. These should not take you that long for these simulations for the first chapter. So configure Microsoft Windows Sandbox and install Microsoft Security Scanner. Both of those are fairly relevant because actually, this is going to sound strange. If you're at your home computer, I'm almost going to tell you you don't need an antivirus solution other than Microsoft's Defender at this point. Now, if you're at a business, I'm going to tell you something different, and there's some reasons why we would do that. So we'll get into the pieces of that. This is really just a link to Krebs on security, so we're going to use his stuff quite a bit because Krebs it's one of the sites that I go to and a lot of other industry professionals go to, and we look at and see what's going on in the world. So here we are, Patch Tuesday. So Windows updated a lot of different things, but guess what? It also has broken a lot of things. So one of the things that you'll find out is, hey, we fixed this security issue, but now we broke network printing for a large corporation. So great. So here's another article from a couple days ago. Identity thieves bypass security to view credit reports. Well, that surely can't be a bad thing, right? So, and in fact, they will bash on Experian because Experian has historically had horrible security and has had several exploits where they have lost information. So all you needed was a person's name, address, birthday, and social security number. Not a lot of detail. And I'd like to think those are all private, especially your social security number, but are they? Unfortunately not. So there's all kinds of things in Krebs, and so a lot of times we go out here. So Equifax also had a breach, and so now you're getting these checks that look really fake. This one I thought was really interesting when I looked at it. People are hacking the Ring doorbells and then recording calling in fake 911 calls saying there is a kidnapping or some other kind of issue going on. So cops are arriving in SWAT teams. Well, that may be amusing, but people have been killed doing that because you wake up in the middle of the night and you hear somebody beating down your door. What's the chance you're going to respond in a manner that's going to get you shot accidentally. And it's happened, unfortunately, quite a bit. So if you haven't heard the term swatting, that may be something you want to look at. So we do a lot with Krebs on security. It's pretty easy to read. It's not, they don't go into hideous technical detail that we don't need. It's kind of here's an overview of what happened in most cases. So Krebs, there is a practice test you can take. And I will say that in a lot of cases, the practice test will have some of the same test questions that will show up on this quiz. Now, again, the quiz is 20 points. Your simulation is 100. I've got to adjust those out at the end of the semester. So I want to talk about a little content here and then show you what we did on the discussion board. So I'll move this so it takes over most of the screen. And it's going to be the right window, of course. Swap. All right. So what I want us to do is I want us to realize a couple of things. One, if I could solve this class, if I could just install one piece of software and suddenly the world is all better, we wouldn't even need this class. The problem is there isn't a simple solution. There isn't an easy way to fix this. The challenges are growing every day. And we look at some of these things that are happening even around us right now. So you may have stayed in a Hyatt. Did your information get hacked? People are getting or will be seeing attacks from IRS scams. People will file your tax return to get your refund before you do. Great. And I will tell you, dealing with the IRS is not a fun, fast process. Yahoo accounts, aircraft systems. So a couple years ago, I actually got to meet the guy, Chris Roberts, who is accused of being able to, he's a cyber researcher, and he actually took over the flight controls from the entertainment system on a plane. The airlines say, oh no, that's not possible. The FAA says, oh, that's not possible. But I'm not sure that's necessarily true, because they're not going to want to reveal that, oh yeah, he really was right, and we didn't secure these systems inside of our planes. And so one of the weird assets I got with that was my father-in-law was a pilot until he retired. He flew 747s internationally, 777s, 757s, and so we got to talk about that. And my father-in-law is one of those guys that he knows every nut and bolt on there, way beyond what most people would want. He wants to know what every piece and everything in there and how it works. So we had some talks about that, and I'm pretty sure that he actually did take over some control surfaces of the plane. How's that for frightening? So I don't need to go on the plane and actually, stab everybody with a knife. What if I could take over that plane remotely? We know that there are things out there. There are cars that have been vulnerable. So if your car does a Wi-Fi update to its security software or to its firmware in there, it's a little frightening because it may not be as secure as you think. We're reaching issues with sizes of things. There's vulnerabilities everywhere. We want things faster than ever. I don't want to wait for the latest update from Windows, or I don't want to wait for an app to be really vetted. I want to put it on my phone now. So we have this idea of what all kinds of things can we do. So we have more devices. We have more attacks, more tools out there to attack you. Yeah. And in fact, a lot of those, you may have heard a term called script kiddies. Well, script kiddies comes from the idea that I can go on the World Wide Web and I can find tools to do all kinds of damage. In fact, if we scroll back to that Krebs article and you scroll down a little bit, one of the articles was talking about the FBI took down a bunch of sites that did what's called a DDoS attack. You paid for them to attack a website. And the FBI took down some, not all of them, and there's still a ton of information about that. Distributed attacks, in other words, we're using multiple vectors. We're logging in and we're able to take over the control of video camera systems all over and use those to send out the distributed and denial of service attacks. Companies are forced to allow you to plug systems in that you own. So how are you going to tell the vice president of IBM that he can't have his own laptop? Oops. And then we have, I think, one of our biggest issues, one that we can have some effect on, and that is the users. So if we deal with the users, some of these other things we can also deal with. So we have to think about what terminology we're going to use. What are we talking about when we talk about security? And we have to always remember this. Security and convenience are directly opposite each other. How many times have you heard me already gripe up here going, man, I got to use that third-party authenticator so I can log into Blackboard. Or maybe you've done it yourself, or Canvas, I mean. I still can't get my head around saying Canvas instead of Blackboard. But is it annoying and frustrating sometimes to have those third-party authenticators? Yeah. But does it increase our security? Yes. So there's always that delicate balance between convenience and security. So how do we get, especially our users, to understand why we're making them do things? In a lot of healthcare settings, one of the rules that a lot of places go to is that computer logs out after 2 minutes. Well, if you think about it, say a nursing station, if they have to get up and run to a patient room, they may not know how long they're going to be gone. So that makes some sense. But if you're sitting in the office and you turn around to file some papers and, oh man, I got to go through this whole login process again, is that frustrating to you? It's secure, but we have to be aware of what's going on there. So, what are we talking about information that's secure? Things that are manipulated by a CPU or a processor, things that are preserved, things that are transmitted. We want to make sure that all of these items are done correctly so that, great, I locked my computer workstation, but every email I sent got intercepted because it wasn't encrypted. So, we also have this thing called a triad. So the triad, the CIA triad, and not the actual CIA that comes after you, but confidentiality, in other words, only people that need it have access. Integrity, that information is correct, and availability, that information is available. So if I think about it, I could have integrity because I unplugged the server, but that doesn't make that data available. So we call it the triad of how we define information. So this is a graphic version of it, but all of these things interrelate, all the way from people, products, policies, how it's transmitted, how it's stored. So we will take a look at a lot of those ideas as we go through the semester. So this first chapter, you get hit over the head with a lot of terminology. So some of these will make sense. Some of them you go, I've never heard it called that before. So an asset. When I say an asset, most people think, hey, that's something I got stored in the safe. I have a ring. But really, it's anything that has value. And in today's society, what has more value, material possessions or data? If I Google, what's more important, my data and my information and my processes, or the actual servers that they're stored on? The servers. We're finding out that data has a lot more value. And even around here, here's one that you wouldn't think about, probably, unless you're a farmer. Anybody in here a farmer? Farm family? No? Okay. Well, I'll use this example and try to... So even around here, you've noticed that land values probably have increased. And there was the most... Down by Falls City, they actually had land that sold for, I think it was like $27,000 an acre. Great. That's craziness. I don't know how that ever works. I can't wrap my head around how that makes money over farming. But if I'm going to sell property now, I want not only the property, but I want the information about what has historically been done to that property. So if I'm keeping very good records of, so now a lot of our equipment is automated. You can see how you prescriptively applied pesticides and fertilizer and everything. Those records become valuable. Your property becomes more valuable because you know what has happened to it over every year. How much yield did they get per spot? All those kinds of things I think are going to raise those property values even more. Or If you don't have that information, you just have property, you go, I don't know, I think they raised some corn there. It's going to lower that price. The same way even with a house. If I have knowledge and documented information about how that house has been maintained, it's worth more to me than if I walk in the door and I don't know if it's ever been checked for radon and mitigated, or if the foundation walls have been checked to make sure they're not falling in, or I'm just guessing that the roof is 2 years old, not 25. So that information is what makes a lot of things valuable. So a threat, so something that has a potential to cause harm. So, and then that makes sense then that threat actor is that person or group or whatever it is that could carry out said threat. So if I'm walking down the street and 5 giant wrestlers come out from a high school gym and tell me that they're going to kick my butt, that's a threat, right? And the threat actors then are those high school wrestlers. So if you're a high school wrestler, I'm just picking on you there a little bit. So this may make more sense. So here's the person that's the threat actor and the stolen scooter. That scooter's an asset, and if I leave it unlocked, it's going to get stolen. You guys may have already experienced what happens to a bicycle if you leave it unlocked and you're in a bigger city. It goes away really quick, doesn't it? They disappear really quick. And I've had an example of that happen in my wife's car. We actually bought a new car a few years ago for her, and she took her bike. She was doing training in Omaha, but she was doing something for something called Project Harmony, and it's not necessarily in the greatest location. So she actually put her bike inside the car, had it locked up, and they broke out a window, a little back pane in the window to get in, unlock the car, and take the bicycle. So threat was losing the bicycle. So now when we go anywhere and we load on 10 grand worth of BMX bikes or mountain bikes or whatever, are we paranoid when we stop for gas even that we force somebody to stay behind? Yeah, because it doesn't take that long to grab one and take off with it. A couple other terms. So we hear the term vulnerability a lot, and that's that idea that there is some kind of weakness. So if you hear a vulnerability that says, oh, there's a vulnerability in Microsoft PowerPoint that allows me to take over from a PowerPoint, your computer, that's that flaw. It's a weakness that we've managed to figure out how to bypass. Risk, we've all talked about risk, and some of you may be or have already taken like a risk management course. A risk says, hey, there's going to be some kind of danger or threat that we're going to be exposed to. How do I deal with it? And so we have a couple of different models, and you see this in a lot of our courses. How do I deal with risk? I'm going to guess everybody in here has a car and they're driving. How do I deal with risk in that car? Because if I get in a car crash and it's my fault, I've got to pay to fix their car. So what do I do in that case to avoid that risk? Insurance. In other words, I have some way to transfer that risk to somebody else. So the other thing I could do is, can I accept that risk? Well, yeah, it's probably not a really great idea, but you could say, I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to get a ticket and I'm going to have to pay forever. But even when we transfer it, sometimes we need to make sure that we're transferring in the appropriate amount. So I actually have a college roommate of mine when I was living in a dorm room or a fraternity. He got into a car crash. Had the minimum insurance he needed to buy for his car. But he totaled out at that time 8 or 10 vehicles. Is that enough to pay for that? Nope. No. And for 20 years plus, he was paying on that over time. So avoiding risk. So figuring out some way that we don't get the risk, but we're also not engaging in that activity. So think about this. You're going to get in your car and you're going to drive to Walmart because you have a hankering for, I don't know, what do you run to Walmart to buy? Ramen noodles? Whatever it is. It's 11 o'clock. I'm hungry. Our cafeteria is closed. I need something to eat. And I can't eat another piece of Casey's pizza, right? So, but it's icy and snowy. So avoiding that risk would be making a decision that, you know what? I'm going to make the smart choice and not drive, so I'm also avoiding that risk. but I also don't get the reward at the end also. So I don't get my tasty ramen noodles for 13 cents. And then the mitigation is what we're going to do most of in here, because we're looking at how do I minimize that risk. So we're still making those decisions to behave. We're still operating a business, but we have to come up with some way to work on that. So that's another, when they have a chart in there, those are a good way to study those and kind of understand what we're talking about and how we're dealing with it. So what do we do? Why do we care about information security? So if I think about our example here at Peru, do we have data that could be valuable to people here at Peru? Yeah, your student information data would probably be the most critical, human resources data. So we need to figure out a way, perhaps, to prevent that data loss so that your identity doesn't get stolen. There are also legal consequences. If we lose data, can the feds come down on us and say, hey, that's not a good idea? Yeah. We also want to be able to make sure that we're maintaining productivity. In other words, we're able to do things. We're able to work. Now, a little less here about foiling cyber terrorism, but we're going to talk a lot about terroristic behavior. But an example of cyber terrorism might be you came in and you failed your last 2 semesters of classes and we kicked you off the campus. You're mad, so you went and hired a DNS spoofing company to spoof the address so that Peru's website disappears off the planet. That'd be a form of terrorism or espionage in there. So, personal data, identity theft, couple of them that are new, or one of them that's really, is actual medical data now. So, if I get a credit card, I can go out, create a credit card on you, and what's the biggest credit card line you've ever heard of? $10, $20, $30,000 maybe more. But most people aren't going to be able to get that much money. So I have a credit card with like a $30,000 limit. Am I able to pull all that $30,000 in cash and run away and say, hey, I stole all this? No. I'm going to end up taking a percentage of it, or I'm going to go buy a bunch of stuff at Best Buy and sell it for 20 cents on the dollar. So where I can gain that is if I steal a bunch of medical information. In some cases, it's very sophisticated. They work with a doctor who's willing to be compromised, and they will set up billing for things like hip replacements. Now, a lot of high school and college students don't need hip replacements, but when suddenly we bill those all and it gets billed to insurance companies, suddenly that's a pretty big check. And so there have a lot of these frauds been caught for millions and millions and millions of dollars, both against insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid and all those. So, and honestly, there are cases, so for example, my youngest daughter was adopted through foster care, and she has Medicaid for insurance. That's one of the perks of adopting her was I don't have to pay for insurance. Now, it really wouldn't make much difference in this case, but it's in there. It's kind of an interesting touch. So if somebody went out and billed out and said, she had all kinds of operations, I wouldn't know about it for a long time until I finally saw a copy of it, and it would get paid out. And again, coming up here, because it's getting closer to taxes, and I say that because I saw all kinds of stuff in my email about, here's your tax information. I don't want it, don't make it go away. But filing fraudulent tax returns is becoming more and more of an issue. And part of that, the IRS is so far behind, it takes them forever to catch up. Meanwhile, somebody files it on you, and you were counting on that couple $1,000 return. Oops. Now you're going to have to wait and figure out what's going to happen. And it's a pretty ugly way to deal with that. So why don't we pass a bunch of laws about it? What's the problem with a bunch of laws about things? And I will say that a little bit, but think about this. Meth is illegal, right? Is there still meth around us everywhere? Pot's illegal. And I guarantee you, I can find 4 people in this town pretty randomly who I could go buy pot from probably, right? Don't tell me any names. You're looking at me like, yeah, I know a guy. No, don't tell me. I did find out a couple years ago in a class, I had a student yell, you know what? Casey used to deliver pizza. It's pretty bad. My weed deliverer will deliver, but Casey's pizza won't. No, I don't need to know that. Those are illegal, right? Oh. And a lot of the drugs come from other countries. Do they care about our U.S. laws? No. So if I'm sitting in Croatia, do I care about a U.S. law, the HIPAA law about, patient data? Nope, don't give it that. Even here in the U.S., do I care probably if I'm a criminal? Nope, probably not. So we have to figure out some ways to prevent things, but passing more and more and more laws doesn't always necessarily fix everything. So this is just an idea, once something has gotten attacked, what the average cost is. And the cost of attacks is going up. And so we see that, and one of the ones we're going to pull out is what it cost the city of Baltimore to recover from a ransomware attack. And it was in the millions. Creighton Health just had an issue not too long ago. And I'm going to guess nationwide they spent several $1 million to try to fix it. So these can get very expensive, take a lot of time. And this is the one I think is going to affect you guys in the next couple of years. This idea of cyber terrorism for political points, political gain. We're already seeing it in the Ukraine and Russia war, that they have tried to pinpoint targets. So if I could shut down the banking industry in the United States for a week, what would happen? Would there be mass chaos? What if I shut down the power grid for a couple of days in the middle of winter? Kids could not live without internet, right? But more likely, what if we got into a water system and you couldn't use the water in your own faucet? Could I damage people, hurt people? Yeah. So think about today. The air traffic system went offline yesterday, the FAA portion of it. I don't think it was a targeted attack. I think it's just kind of an example of the crumbling infrastructure. But do you think that's a target? Oh, heck yeah. If I could shut down the air traffic control, so most of you are not old enough to think all the way back to 9/11, but the cost for that air traffic to be shut down for 9/11 were pretty extreme. Even now, where Southwest is imploded and several other airlines, air travel is already, we figured out, it's kind of a crapshoot right now. And so we have to deal with that. Our military has been exposed in some areas by simple things like even a Fitbit. How could a Fitbit affect the military? Well, that data from that Fitbit, all of a sudden, if we can look on Fitbit's website and see there's a whole cluster of people in the middle of Iraq or Iran or some other odd place, all of them are out jogging at 6 in the morning. Could that be a hidden military base? Yeah. And that's actually, unfortunately, happened. So, who are these people that are attacking us? Who are these people? So, we have to think about what the goal of these people are, or groups that are doing that. Why are they doing it? So, financial cybercrime, so they're wanting to get money, typically. So, typically they're broken into two broad categories. People that go after individuals and those that go under larger groups of businesses, government, those kinds of things. All right. But other groups, if you're well-funded, there are a lot of countries, and I'm not going to say that we don't do it, we do. We fund efforts to do some of these criminal acts in other countries. So if it's a nation state with that level of resources, they have a lot more ability than some script kiddie who's managed to download some programs off the internet. So, but the fact that these exist, and we'll look at some places we can get some of these scripts and tools we can use, it's pretty easy to get. So, this is more of a political statement. So you have seen some of these, and I think we're going to see more in the future as our country gets divided into various sectors. So in the elections, we see a lot of this where if I can take over the Democrats' website, maybe I can, keep the Republicans winning. Or if I take over the Republicans' website, I can keep people from donating. So we see more of this happening. So other examples of this have occurred in like Right to Life /pro-life / abortion rights / human rights. All those kinds of things are out there. We see a lot of that. If you want a really horrible example of a hacktivist, is anybody aware of the Westboro Church down in Topeka, Kansas? Some of you have heard of that. So these are the guys that show up protesting military funerals and all kinds of things. Well, they own a website that is quite literally a hacktivist website, and they would fully like to be able to take over other groups and other things. And it is horrible, but it's also part of that free speech. So here's their website. Oh. Nice, huh? That's the church I want to belong to. That is their... But notice they're worried about security getting in there. So, do you think a group like this would be trying to stop votes for LGBTQIA plus rights? Yeah. So, oh, come back, monitor. All right. So, this is an idea of a group that's a hacktivist. There's all kinds of other ones, but this one is local to us relatively, so I think it's kind of interesting to see and take a look at it. This is probably the worst group. Nation-state actors, because they have the resources to do things. So the Westboro Church may not have a ton of programmers. Do you think the federal government of the U.S. can hire a bunch of programmers? No, I mean other countries. We would never do that, right? So advanced persistent threats. And then lastly, this group, insiders. Why is it insider? So people inside of a group, if you're going to get fired, would you want to get revenge on that company? Maybe you write a script that deletes all their files the day after you get fired. Hiding stock losses, hiding information about a company, healthcare workers releasing information about people, employees. If one of the reasons a lot of employers require credit checks for their employees isn't because they care whether you can make a bank payment or not. But if you don't have good credit because you've done horrible things and you're always on the verge of going bankrupt and not affording, basic necessities, you're more vulnerable to somebody saying, "Hey, here's $1,000 if you slip me a key to the server." Well, we also have ones that have had, especially in the nation-state area, where family members kidnapped or other horrible things that have happened. So, insiders are a really, really bad group. So, I encourage you to take a look at this. That's another group of these threat actors. So, some people are out to make money with it. Some people are politically motivated. So, take a look at that. Make sure those charts you've kind of looked at. So, here's how we're going to fix / mitigate / do this. So, we're going to layer. So, in other words, when I go outside in the middle of the winter, do you just wear one coat, or do you put on like a hoodie and a t-shirt underneath that, and then a coat? Yeah, you layer up because that gives you a little better security. Even in the extent of things like a firewall, which we'll talk about in the future, oftentimes I would like to have two different companies' firewalls installed, one after the other or in tandem or however we do it. Because if Cisco gets compromised and somebody finds some of their web code out there, maybe my Fortinet or my Zyxel or whatever other company I use didn't get affected. So that security we want to do in layers. We want to limit things. And so sometimes it's very frustrating because you can't do things on your computer. So, oh man, I can't install my screensaver I wanted to, or my video game. Because we want to limit what you can do. The less you can do, the safer you are. So, the other piece is that idea of diversity, which is similar to layering, but layering is layers. Diversity tends to be more broad. So, obscurity. In other words, we're hiding things. So, we don't want everybody to know what kind of web server we're on. That reveals if there's some vulnerabilities on it. So a lot of times we work very hard at obscuring some of these details about our company. And then simplicity. It has to be easy enough that our employees are able to work around it still and still be functional, but it needs to be complex from the outside. So in other words, we don't get hackers. So it's a little bit of a frustrating piece because we want simplicity, we want that convenience, but we know that we can't have that. So that's my super quick rundown of the chapter. So that should, as we go through and you read the material, you look at the stuff that's in here, that's a real quick highlight of what we're doing in this first week. And I know we throw a lot of stuff out very, very quickly. So I want to look at the discussion board. So there's an assignment in your discussion board. Well, really a couple. So first I want to point out we have the Fountain of Knowledge. I just called it that. So as we go later on and you have questions and they seem like, man, 4 of us have all kind of communicated and said we don't understand this, this is a great place to post those kinds of questions. That way everybody can see what's going on. So you might want to look at that every once in a while. You have introductions. So please just introduce yourself just so I know a little bit more about you. Maybe I want to know even more. So, all right. And then this week, we have a discussion board. And unfortunately, as we found out, PBS is a pain in my butt, and they took down this original video that I was going to use. So there was a second one that covers a piece of it, which I think is very interesting. So I actually have a link to an entire movie. Now, yeah, I'm going to make you watch a movie for class. So this movie came out a couple of years ago called 0 Days, and so I found a place that has it for free. What's the disadvantage for free? You're going to watch some commercials, right? It is also available on Amazon Prime, and I'm going to guess a few of you have Amazon Prime. If you don't, Amazon Prime is an amazing thing, because Amazon is bad. But Amazon Prime also has it with no commercials, so if you click on it, come on, open. It is a little long, but I think once you find it, you're going to go, man, that's kind of interesting. So, and it will, yeah, there's those ads I was talking about. So, this deals with something called Stuxnet, which was a computer virus, and we've never officially ever said, hey, it was the U.S. government that did this. So, take that with a grain of salt, because they're also this year, or last year, 2022, the U.S. launched an exploit that they said was their first offensive cyber attack. Wait, what about this one? And all the ones in between. So, but anyway, this is actually a really good movie. So please watch that. And then for your discussion board, what I want is kind of a review of it. You don't have to write 6 pages, but I want you to post a response to it. Do you think digital warfare was justified in this case? Might be something to look at. Are we continuing to conduct such operations? That's a yes. Are other countries doing similar attacks? Can this digital warfare be as dangerous as conventional warfare? So, this is an interesting video. We'll let you watch it. It's better than reading the textbook, which we'll make you do again next week. But, so, if you will post on that after you watch that video, and again, I wish I could do the original, but PBS has done a really good job of pulling it from all kinds of sites. So, if you will do this, that is your assignment for this week. So, there are a couple of different pieces. So, you have these 2 rights and a wrong question, the lab simulations, and then the quiz and the discussion board. I know it sounds like a lot, but these shouldn't take you that long. Even the quiz is pretty easy. So, if you've done the reading, went through the flashcards, you've got the quiz made, and then the longest one is going to be the discussion board, simply because I'm making you watch a 2-hour video. So, it's not bad. Bring some popcorn, and you'll what I've discovered is, at least when I watched it, I thought, oh man, it's going to take forever, and it's one of them that actually continues on pretty quickly. It is not like the movie Nebraska that came out a couple years ago. All right, any questions? No questions? All right, let me do this.